Hello ladies and gentlemen, and a very big welcome to you from the very big Nürburgring Nordschleife here in Germany. This is the 12th round of the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series season, and this race is sure to be a thriller. This 14-mile, 160-turn circuit, given the nickname from Sir Jackie Stewart the Green Hell for its green force and incredibly dangerous layout, is sure to get the most out of these drivers tonight in terms of endurance, speed, and consistency. Limiting the number of times you go off track tonight will be the biggest key, as it's sure to happen at least to everyone. We expect tonight to be a wild card in terms of the championship points table. The question is, who will this race favor? Championship leader Trent Krentz starts on pole for the 8th time this year, but I feel no position is for certain. The two other main contenders, Bill Baldwin and Pac-Man, are looking for some luck here after letting Trenton snag his 6th win of the year last week in Bathurst, but they have to climb through the order if they want to stay in championship contention. It is sure to be a big piece of the championship puzzle, and let's see where our contenders start on the grid. A season-low 9 drivers will start the race tonight. Obviously, a lot of guys not really wanting to take on the Nordschleife, and tonight the lead engine will be Trenton Krentz for the 8th time this year. He will start in first, and of course with, I believe, 6 victories on the year, he'll be looking to keep that winning percentage to pole percentage a very high number. Starting right behind him, though, will be Pac-Man, the man who's right behind him in the point standings, and considering tonight's probably going to be a very crazy race, this late in the championship, Pac-Man will need to do all he can to finish first and make sure that gap stays close as the season winds down. Starting third will be JRB, who's got a countless number of 4th places and 2 podiums on the year. And tonight he'll be starting in third, so if he wants a 3rd podium, he's just got to keep a couple guys behind him, but I'm sure he would love to win this amazing event. Bill Baldwin starts 4th, and it's getting into very late in the season, and Bill yet to win a race. Of course, last year's runner-up, right now 3rd in the championship, yet to win a Grand Prix this season, and if he wants a shot at that championship, he's got to start winning, and this might be the make-or-break point. This could be the point of no return in terms of race wins, and Bill starting 4th will have his hands tied behind his back and his eyes blindfolded if he wants to win tonight at the Nordschleife. Jesse Carlson starts 5th in his Chevy Corvette. He obviously won Northern Ireland a few weeks ago, a surprise winner a few weeks ago. And tonight being more than likely a crazy race, we'll see if Jesse can bounce back from a pretty off-the-pace 5th place finish last week in Bathurst. Obviously, this track is going to be even crazier than it was last week, so we'll see what Jesse can do here at the Green Hell. Chris Ryan will start 6th in the 2nd Chevy Corvette on the grid, and Chris has had a really solid season himself, still searching for that first podium on the year. Has a really good number of top 5s, but still wants that first podium, and if there's going to be a shot at it tonight is the night. Percussive starts 7th, and that's a little bit further down the order than we generally do see. The Toyota FT1 driver has finished outside the top 5, I believe, just 3 times this season, so a very consistent year for Percussive, and will look to find himself back into that top 5 and maybe finally get that first podium of the year that he's come so close to many times. Alex Tezdal, the only Ford Mustang on the starting grid, will start in 8th. Alex has had a pretty slow yet solid start to the season, a good number of top 10s to start his career. Obviously going to be locked into the top 10 tonight with just 9 starters. Going to look for his first top 5 of the year, and it'll be the same story for Rob Lohman Sr., who starts 9th right behind him in the Chevy Corvette. Who will tame the Green Hell, and who will fall victim to this treacherous beast? Let's get to the green flag from the Nordschleife. Trent Krentz leads the way, and green flag is out here at the Nordschleife. They'll take the starting green flag from somewhat down the back straightaway, have to navigate this tight technical section of the track at the tail end of the circuit. So many tight corners on this track. Track memorization is almost impossible on this track. This is the final right-hander here. This is the actual front straightaway. Start-finish line, they go by now, and Trent Krentz leads the way into turn 1. A huge race on a massive track. Getting late in the season, this is the make or break point for a lot of these guys if they want to set themselves up for a championship run. And Trent Krentz wants to start running away with the championship. The man right behind him on track is the man right behind him in points. That's Pac-Man. And Pac-Man started the season with 3 straight wins. And then once he started losing, we saw him kind of crack a little bit under the pressure, really trying to get back to his winning ways once Trent Krentz started to win all the time. And we saw him start to become a little impatient, started to see him make a couple of mistakes. Italy and Brands Hatch are some examples of those moments, but recently we have seen him definitely just go mainly to just put his head down and run consistent and smooth, and we saw him just, I believe, 2 weeks ago win in Austria. And tonight will definitely be a race where I believe consistency will be the main factor. You don't want to be aggressive. It'll be trying to keep the car on track. That'll determine who finishes where. Already Trent Krentz starting to pull away from the crowd behind him. Pac-Man, I think I saw him get a little bit of a tank slapper at the top of the hill a couple minutes ago. So that might have held up the line behind him. Right behind him will be JRB. He saw Pac-Man eat up the curb and he's into the wall. And huge accident there for Pac-Man, championship contender. Falling back to 6th. As they go through the first third of the track, Pac-Man really tried to fly through a right-hander and hit the curb, and the car went up in the air and then it just spun on him. And now Pac-Man, second in the championship, was running second in the race. Now runs 6th and sees the championship slip further away. Percussive's right behind him. Rob Lohman Sr. runs 8th. Alex Tezdal 9th. Trent Krentz now definitely going to have a bit of a sigh of relief if he saw that go down in his rearview mirror. He's got an even bigger lead now with JRB second place behind him. Bill Baldwin 3rd. Jesse Carlson 4th. Chris Ryan 5th. Of course, Pac-Man way back in 6th. And just as I was talking about the aggression needing to stay down and just keep the car facing the right way, Pac-Man does the exact opposite. Hits the wall, has a massive wreck into the wall, and falls all the way back to 6th. Let's see how far off he is off this lead pack. Pac-Man in 6th. They don't actually have the time yet. That's great. But he's definitely quite a ways behind. Here's Chris Ryan in 5th. Heading up through the uphill right-hander. Here's Pac-Man. And now he heads to the uphill right-hander. So I'd say about 5 or 6 seconds from the tail end of this lead pack. And even Chris Ryan's dropping off that pack. And here's a nice battle here. Jesse Carlson and Bill Baldwin have gone at it a good number of times this year. See some breast cancer awareness cars. Great sight to see. And we see Jesse Carlson. His car is supporting a good cause. It's the Lefty Pride car. The actual name of the paint scheme designer, it's not quite coming to me. Obviously, big Jimmy Johnson fans. He's a big social media guy that designed this Rainbow Ally 48 paint scheme that Jesse Carlson is currently running. And I will try to have my sources get me the name of that designer. Back up front, of course, Trent Krentz leading the way through the carousel. Obviously 2 lines through the carousel, and we'll likely see everybody just try to stick it in that bottom groove. That kind of just loops the car around. You see Pac-Man going through it now. It just sucks you around with the banking. Definitely one of the more interesting corners in the world, but definitely one of the more fun ones as well. Here's Percussive. I believe he just exited the carousel. Rob Lohman Sr. coming up to it now in his Chevy Corvette. And Alex Tezdal quite a way behind him. Back up front, it's Trent Krentz. 5 minutes in to this event. And he has quite a lead on the pack behind him. I mean, actually, I take that back. Earlier, it seemed like he was going to just pull away off into the distance in the Trent Krentz style, but silly me. JRB is staying right in his shadow. So many places to make a mistake on this circuit. And for how long this race is going to be. There's so much time to make many mistakes. So we will see who will keep it clean, and whoever keeps it the most clean will, I almost guarantee, finish up front, because it's just not really a track that if you make a good number of mistakes, you're going to catch back up. This is a circuit that it almost fights against the driver. This is not a driver circuit. This is a circuit that the drivers will have to tame. The drivers will have to be nice to. if it wants the green hell to be nice in return. So, of course, Pac-Man we saw make the big mistake earlier. If he wants to catch back up, he's got to be nice and gentle to that car. He can't overdrive it and send it into the barrier again. Down the long back straightaway, this entire front pack goes. And now Trent Krentz coming finally around to where we took the green flag 7 minutes ago. It's about a 7-minute lap. Which with some basic math, that'll be about an 8-lap race. So obviously laps don't really matter. I'm expecting a pit stop. At least one. This is not a track that we'll probably see Jesse Carlson try to pull off a crazy strategy like we see him pull off every week. This will more than likely be a one-stop race. Obviously, these are things I don't know. I just see them happen and then yell about them. Oh, and there's Jesse Carlson. Big tank slapper there. Does a great job of car control. And I was rambling on a couple minutes ago about his paint scheme. It was designed by Noah Sweet, aka Lefty Designs, who designed this Pride scheme. Became a bit of a story. I won't get too much into it. Probably guess what it was about. But good for Noah Sweet. He has a Jimmy Johnson scheme that he designed, and Jimmy Johnson's actually going to run it at Texas if that race ever happens. Enough of that. This is obviously the pinnacle of motorsport, the NOSSCAR GT Cup Series from Nordschleife. We got Trent Krentz with some slight pressure from JRB behind him. JRB doing a really good job of sticking with Trent Krentz. If not, has honestly maybe closed up. You see there, best first sector, or whatever sector that is. I think that's the second sector out of anybody. And you see him definitely in the tire tracks of Trent Krentz, so we will see if JRB can maybe make a move for the lead. I don't expect Trent Krentz to race somebody who's out of the championship too hard. JRB, obviously on a part-time schedule, isn't necessarily running for the championship. So if JRB really starts going for it, I don't exactly know what Trent Krentz's plan would be. If he's that hungry for a win when he's got a comfortable championship lead, or if he'll say, you know what, JRB, here you go, here's the lead, and I'll just settle for second. But with Bill Baldwin in third, I don't know exactly if Trent Krentz would just hand over first place and drop back to second, because then Bill Baldwin might get around as well. That top three definitely separating themselves from the rest of the grid. Jesse Carlson has his Corvette teammate, Chris Ryan, behind him, and these two never seeming to get away from each other. Always putting on a show, and you can just see in the background Pac-Man lurking on this tail end of the top five. He still runs sixth, sorry. And Percussive a little bit further down than we normally see him, usually obviously in that top five battle. But right now, way off in 7th place. Alex Tezdal's made his way up to 9th, and Rob Lohman Sr.'s already dropped out just a lap into the Grand Prix. So just 8 cars on track. There's Alex Tezdal mowing the grass in his Ford Mustang lawnmower. And these drivers wind their way through the German forest. 3 Toyotas leading the field. At this point, don't really even have to mention that it's Toyotas leading the way. Toyotas have locked down the podium every race but one, and that was back at Northern Iowa when Jesse Carlson, the Corvette, won the race. So the Toyotas definitely the dominating force in this series so far. The Supra, the only Supra we've consistently seen. We've seen some Supras show up and race one race and then leave, but Trent Krentz has ran that Toyota Supra all season long. He's the only Supra to run every race, and obviously he's been the dominant driver of the year. So all these guys in the FT1s, I believe there's 4 or 5 guys in Toyota FT1s, maybe thinking, maybe we should have taken the Supra. It's obviously got some magic. It's 2 FT1's tail. Trent Krentz's Supra. This top 3 battle really not separating. And on a track like this, generally, we don't really see many close battles. This is a track where people just, or drivers just run their own laps and just let the race come to them. But this top 3 not letting each other get away. So we may see an uncharacteristic on-track battle for the Nordschleife. And that certainly would be a sight to see. Graffiti on the track, basically all over the entire circuit. That's from really anybody being able to go along the circuit for track days and whatnot here in Germany. This is honestly more of a tourist attraction at this point than a racing circuit. Only 1 or 2 real races a year here on the entire Nordschleife circuit. But definitely, if you're in Germany, you got to go to the Autobahn and then the Nordschleife. This is definitely one of the most historic places in the racing world, if not just in general. And this is definitely a sight to see, this massive circuit in the German hillside. That right now is treating us to quite a close race for the race lead. If we check the timing sheets, which are probably very outdated, JRB is about 1.7 seconds off of Trent Krenz, and it's about the same gap back to Bill Baldwin. There we see the timing sheets update. So JRB actually drops down to 2 seconds, and then Bill Baldwin closes up the gap up to JRB to 1 second. And then the rest of the field, obviously halfway through whatever sector they're in. 5 sectors on this track. And you see down the back straightaway, in one camera shot, we had, what was that, 5 or 6 cars? Which is incredible. Just shows how long that back straightaway is. These cars will reach their top end by the end of that straight. And not too hard at braking into the left-hander at the end of the straight, but definitely through that winding section. We see Jesse Carlson, Pac-Man, who just got around Chris Ryan, and Chris Ryan. They navigate their way through this very twisty, very tight, basically S section at the end of the lap. Less than 7 minutes that time around as we start lap 3. Pac-Man looks like he's made his way up the field a little bit, closed up to Chris Ryan. Now he's into the top 5 positions. And next on track for the championship contender to hunt down is Jesse Carlson, who goes for a slide again. I think that might be the same exact spot we saw him last time, you know, forever ago, going for the exact same tank slapper. So Jesse really driving that car hard. Back up front. It's Bill Baldwin still trailing JRB, who's still trailing Trent Krenz. Down this very long, it's not really a straightaway, obviously, but it's flat out for most of that section that we just saw these guys go through. That the rest of the top 5 are going through now. It winds left. It slowly makes its way to the left, but it's flat out, and you absolutely soar across the hillsides here at the Nordschleife. And just Jesse Carlson just now set the fastest sector too. So you see here, really anybody can set a good lap time anywhere. Jesse running 4th, but right now with the best pace on track, at least in terms of the last sector. Or maybe he's putting his head down and he's going to try to catch up to the top 3. That would be something to see. And just visually, it looks like either JRB's... one, JRB has definitely closed up to less than 2 seconds on Trent Krenz, but at the same time, it also looks like Bill Baldwin may have dropped back a bit. But that could just be a product of the fact that JRB's closed up to Trent Krenz. and in turn opened up that gap. We'll look at the timing sheets, obviously very outdated. 1.5 seconds just about from Trent Krentz, the leader, back to JRB, and then 2.3 back to Bill Baldwin. That gap, JRB to Bill Baldwin, was 1 second last we checked. Here, they just finished the sector, 1.3 and then 2.7, so Bill Baldwin certainly losing time on the two guys ahead of him. Really driving that car. And really overdriving it, clearly. Maybe making some mistakes or wearing out the tires. Already 17 minutes into this event. Absolutely flown by, because there's nothing boring about this track. There's always something going on. Not really in terms of on-track action. Obviously a close battle up front. But somebody's always going through some interesting corner or maybe off track. And there's always something to see when there's a race here in Germany. And it's never boring. See here, Pac-Man hasn't really pulled away from Chris Ryan at the rate we might usually expect him. We might see in this camera shot here, not, well, yeah, just there. You saw the gap from Jesse Carlson back to Pac-Man. It's really not closing up. If anything, maybe Jesse, I think, has really put his head down. I think, yes, another fastest sector there from Jesse. Jesse's trying to close up to the top 3. He is really driving that car around one of the toughest tracks to race at in the world, if not the toughest. So the young driver, the 48, really doing a good job here on the 3rd lap of this Grand Prix. Back up front, there's Trent Krentz making his way downhill through the long right-hander. JRB looks like he's dropped back a little bit. As you see there, Trent Krentz responds to that gap closure I was just mentioning earlier by setting a fastest sector through whatever sector they just went through. And has definitely closed that gap, or sorry, opened the gap back up to JRB. And Bill Baldwin just in the background peeking over that hill, I think has just remained about the same in terms of the gap from himself to JRB. Maybe close up just a little bit. I don't know. It seems to be very back and forth between all 3 of these guys in terms of closing in, opening the gap, catching back up, and then opening back up again. And really, I think that's a product of the circuit. I mean, it's so hard to put together a perfect lap on this track. So you might see a gap bumper to bumper at the start of the lap, and then halfway through the lap, it could be a 5-second gap, and then when they finish the lap again, bumper to bumper. I mean, it's just a massive track, clearly. And there's just so many twists and turns and so many places to improve or lose time that you don't really know where you're running until the end of the lap. Because anything could happen here at the Nordschleife. As we saw on lap 1, when Pac-Man, running in second, was losing some time to Trent Krentz and then made a mistake trying to close the gap back up early on. And made a big mistake, and actually, it just went completely over my head. Pac-Man is running 6th again, and we just saw there on the timesheets he lost 13 seconds, so Pac-Man made some sort of mistake. Let's go back and see if we could see what might have happened. Still 6th, right here. Okay, so he got passed by Chris Ryan at some point, was right on his bumper, was trying to get back around him and just got 2 in his head, and huge hit there on the right side of the car. So at some point, Chris Ryan got back around him. I mentioned a couple minutes ago, it didn't really look like he was pulling away from Chris, and then the 24 got back around the 19, and the 19 wanted none of it, and he just drove it too hard and took a huge hit on the right side of that car. So that sends Pac-Man back down to 6th place again. He was trying to work his way through the field and made his way back from 6th to 5th. But now with that, he is quite a way behind. Outside the top 5. Pac-Man has finished on the podium every race except for 1. But he's been in the top 5 every race this season. But a 6th place here today especially if Trent Krentz holds the lead. That will be absolutely detrimental to Pac-Man Championship hopes. Right now, Trent Krentz definitely with a heavy foot trying to pull away from JRB, and you could see there, at one point it was just a second and a half, and now as they come across the line, we'll check the timing sheets again. Trent Krentz definitely the best lap of the Grand Prix so far. Comes across the line a 6-minute 41-second lap. Bill Baldwin and JRB are in for their stops, trying to get the undercut on race leader Trent Krentz. I was going to check the timing sheets, but obviously going to be thrown off. Here's Jesse Carlson in for his first stop as well. So everybody, let's see what Chris Ryan does. Chris is going to pull in as well. So everyone in the top 5 except for Trent Krentz pitting here on the start of lap 4 into lap 3, 20 minutes into the event. So this might actually be a 2-stop race, which if you ask me is kind of insane, but really it's not, I guess. So Chris Ryan and Pac-Man came in. That's the top 6. Percussive still making his way down the back straight. And Alex Tezdal about halfway through the lap as well. They have obviously yet to reach the pit lane, but everybody so far, except for Trent Krentz, has pit. So now, JRB and Bill Baldwin are going to have to put down the laps of their lives to try to get a nice undercut on the race leader. And Trent Krentz, in turn, is going to have to put in a really good in-lap. And on old tires, that is asking for a lot. Generally, the undercut prevails. But on a track like this, I don't really know how much it'll matter. So considering this is a two-stop race, I was going to say I'm a little surprised Jesse Carlson's not going to try to make it a one-stop, because week in and week out we see him pull off some strange, yet they work, strategy calls. But considering the fact that you don't want to blow a tire or run out of gas on the Nordschleife, it's probably best to just play it safe. That's really the motto of anything you do on the track. Just play it safe and make it to the end. And you see here, Jesse Carlson, I think, has lost a little bit of time to Chris Ryan. If I remember correctly, he had quite a gap on the 24. Now, it's just one corner between the two. You see Pac-Man here in 6th place. Going to have to catch back up to Chris Ryan for the second time in the number 19 Mountain Dew Toyota. Outside the top 5, definitely foreign territory for the man who runs second in the points. So we won't know for about 4 minutes on if Trent Krentz is even going to pit this lap. We could see him pull off a crazy strategy gamble. I mean, what does he really have to lose? He's obviously some sort of evil genius. He's won 6 races this year. Maybe more, I don't know. I have a terrible memory. And he just seems unbeatable if he keeps the car clean. So obviously some sort of evil genius is going on inside that Toyota Super cockpit. And we will see. I mean, more than likely he'll pit this lap, but I just find it very odd that everyone else pit on lap 3 and he's pitting lap 4. I don't know. We'll see what he does in about now 3.5 minutes time. That is race leader Trent Krentz, championship leader Trent Krentz, and then number 15 unironically sponsored Corona Toyota Supra. JRB definitely with a gap back to Bill Baldwin larger than it's been all race. Bill was about 2.5 seconds fluctuating between there behind JRB, but now I'd say it's about 5 seconds, 6.5 at the last sector split. So obviously pit stops definitely playing a factor in that, depending on how long they take in general. Bill Baldwin this season, his pit stops seem to be slower than everyone else's. I really feel like Bill Baldwin's been passed in the pit lane more than anyone else all year. And with that gap opening up, that shows itself even more. They'll come through the carousel now. Here's JRB about to enter the carousel for the 4th time today. I tell you, I've driven the track a couple times, and that is the one part of the track I look forward to. It's just dropping it down into that banked hairpin and just looping around. It's like a roller coaster ride. We'll see Jesse Carlson ride the roller coaster. Absolutely perfect. Just shoots you back the other direction. And here, we will see a battle for 5th. And who will shoot first? Chris Ryan runs 5th, Pac-Man 6th. We've seen this battle. We missed it once. We've watched it once and then missed it a second time. And we'll see if Pac-Man can keep his nose clean this time around while trying to get around the 24 Chevy Corvette. This was about the same area of the track, I believe. I don't know. I don't really know this track. It looked like this last time Pac-Man tried to get around Chris Ryan, and obviously we saw him hit the wall hard. And you see all the damage on that green Toyota. All the scratches on the left front, left side, and I saw some scratches on the right rear as well. Might see some on this camera angle. But he has tore that car up. Starting from 2nd, dropping back to 6th. Made his way back up to 5th, and then has now dropped back to 6th. Again, making his way back up to 5th again. We will see if he can actually get the move to stick, though. When he passed Chris earlier, I believe it was in the slipstream in the back straightaway, which they're coming up to in just a second. So we will see if he's able to repeat that move to get back inside the top 5. So it'll be about 8 or 9, maybe 10 laps, just depends. We're coming up pretty soon on the halfway point in terms of time. And we will see Trent Krentz is about to leave the back straightaway and make his way into the, end of one lap, beginning of the next. And we'll see if Trent Krentz comes in this lap. Right now, though, we will watch this battle for 5th as it's about to come onto the back straightaway. Pac-Man is definitely at a slipstream range on Chris Ryan. It'll depend if he can get a better run through this uphill, downhill right-hander. Trent Krentz, by the way, is into the pit lane, and Pac-Man absolutely nailed the right-hander. And now the slipstream of the Chevy Corvette, the Toyota FT1, will try to suck up to the back bumper and then fly by. We'll see, though. Pac-Man about car length behind Chris Ryan. Closing, closing, closing. Trent Krentz, we will see if he gets jumped by JRB. The leaderboard is showing that he has been by Bill Baldwin as well. Right now we are watching Pac-Man get past Chris Ryan at the end of the back straightaway, and back up front we see JRB has undercut Trent Krentz. Trent Krentz has stayed in front of Bill Baldwin, and that is huge. So Trent Krentz staying out the extra lap has been undercut. Now, obviously, on the fresher tires, 1 lap fresher tires. Now, this track, that means a lot. We will see if he can get back around JRB for the race lead, and more than likely race win. Excuse my hiccup there. Bill Baldwin, though, has to be kicking himself. Obviously has lost a lot of time on JRB, and if he had kept that about 2-second gap that he had before the pit stop, Bill, if not getting past Trent Krentz, he would at least be right on the back bumper of that Toyota Supra. Don't forget, though, there is still another pit stop to go in about 12 minutes. Trent Krentz will try to close back up to JRB and maybe even get around him. And I'm not really sure what the game plan is should he not be able to even close up. And that's what I mean. On a track like this, I would just run the same strategy as everyone else. This is a track. I'm not going to take any crazy risks. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm just going to let the race come to me. That's how I'd approach it. But, I'm in a commentary booth. Not even. I'm just sitting at my desk talking into a microphone, telling you stuff that you can just watch with your eyes. But Trent Krentz, championship leader, reigning series champion. Doing whatever it takes, I suppose. Going through one of my favorite parts of the track, that left-hander up the hill right and then into a very tight chicane. And back down the hill. That's JRB in the number 12 Toyota FT1. Nice black, pink, and white paint scheme. There's the nice, very, very pretty white, blue, and gold paint scheme. Obviously the alternate scheme to the bluish purple Toyota Supra we see every week. And then Bill Baldwin in a very nice breast cancer awareness scheme as well. That is your top three. It's been that top three basically the entire race, aside from a couple minutes where Pac-Man was up there. Pac-Man has obviously made his way back up to 5th place, getting around Chris Ryan at the end of the last lap. And Chris, I think, has made a mistake because he's quite a way behind the Toyota now. So Chris maybe was trying to get back around Pac-Man and then made a mistake of his own. Not sure. But now Jesse Carlson has Pac-Man not too far behind him. And we will see what occurs when Pac-Man catches the lead Corvette. There was one lap earlier in the race, I mentioned it, that Jesse was really putting down some good sector times, and it looked like he was closing up to the 3 guys in front. Nothing ever really seemed to come of that, though, as he's still probably about, I'd say 10 seconds behind Bill Baldwin. Let's check the time now. 12 seconds. At one point, I thought he might be in that lead battle, but just nothing ever came of that one good lap that we watched him put down. That was the same lap, however, that Trent Krentz set the fastest lap of the race, so I'm sure the 2 guys behind him responded, therefore negating any gap that Jesse Carlson had closed up. I don't know. A lot of common sense involved in racing. I don't have a lot of it. So, and here's Jesse Carlson, just as we put the cameras away, hits the wall. Doesn't look like it affected him too much. Might have just overshot the corner a little bit. Got into the grass and scraped it. But doesn't really have a good exit of the carousel either. Neither does Pac-Man. Generally, you want to just follow the banking all the way around and it just shoots you out. They kind of overdrove it and left the banking. But regardless, Jesse Carlson clearly overdrove that tight right-hander and went off track a little bit. We saw the tail end of it. He was ghosted and off the track. Doesn't seem to have cost him too much time. Still his personal best sector time. So clearly didn't bother him too much. Pac-Man will probably note, though, if he caught any of that, that the 48 driver has made a couple mistakes, and Pac-Man could take advantage of those mistakes and make his way back up to 4th. It will be absolutely incredible, though, if Pac-Man can make his way into the podium positions. If he's able to close that gap, that would be insane. I really don't think he's got it in him right there. Fastest sector, whatever time. But seriously, unless if, one of the top 3 makes a huge mistake, I don't see the Toyota number 19 driver finishing any better than 4th. And that's gonna really hurt his championship hopes, considering the championship leader right now runs 2nd with a really good chance to win. And then the man right behind him in the championship is going to finish ahead of him as well. And there we saw JRB off the track in the grass doing some off-roading. And with that, it's probably going to really affect his speed down this back straightaway. And Trent Krentz right on him now. We will see Trent Krentz. Is he close enough in that slipstream to close up and make a move? I don't think so. Down the back straightaway for the 5th time today, past halfway in the race. Trent Krentz, I don't think, has really closed up at all down the back straightaway. Slipstream not too big of a factor. Tried to take advantage of JRB going off track a little bit, but didn't close up enough. Now we see him wind through the tail end of the lap. It's been so long, I completely forgot Trent Krentz even made a pit stop. That was his out lap. And sets a 6-minute 44-second lap time. On to lap 6 now with about 25.5 minutes to go in the event. And right now, it looks like any one of these 2 guys, JRB or Trent Krentz, could win the race. And if you want to throw in another driver in there, definitely Bill Baldwin might have a shot. He's got to put down some really good lap times and have a good second pit stop. But if these 2 guys there, JRB and Trent Krentz, 1st and 2nd, go at it, Bill Baldwin might be there as well. I don't know. It'll be definitely a very exciting battle for this lead spot, though. Up and down they go through the German hillside and into this very tricky long right-hand hairpin. That is now your 3 liters making their way through that section of the track. Definitely one of the fastest parts of the circuit. But also, you lose one bit of concentration, you go off the track and lose a ton of time. So far, yet to see anybody really go off there. But definitely one of the more fun parts of the circuit. I think the more this track goes on, the less fun it gets, based on my experience. That could just be because I know the beginning of the lap very well, but then I have to restart the lap because I make a mistake at some point. So I don't know the second half of the lap as well as the rest. There's a very tight left-right chicane. That Pac-Man running in 5th makes his way through as he tries to catch up to this man in 4th place. That's Jesse Carlson, who runs a little bit off track there. I don't think that'll bother him too much. Didn't hit the wall or anything. And makes his way back down the hill. Back up front, here is this battle for the lead. JRB in 1st, Trent Krentz in 2nd place, and it's at most a second, just about 2 or 3 car lengths between the two. And Trent Krentz on the 1-lap fresher tires. If he wants this strategy to really work, he's honestly probably got to make this move before the pit cycle. And the pit cycle's coming up, depending, end of this lap or the next. I'm not too sure, really. Just because generally, based when pit cycles happen off the time in the bottom left. But considering that this track is massive and the lap times are insane, I can't really do that. But my rough guess would be end of this lap, they will pit. At least everybody but Trent Krentz. So, in theory, for the overcut that Trent Krentz has committed to successfully work, he's got to pass JRB before the pit cycle, which is in about 25 corners time. Through the carousel, Trent Krentz took it very tight. He dropped that car all the way to the bottom. And you can tell he's really trying to drive that car to catch up to JRB. There you see, though, JRB sets a best sector whatever out of anybody in this event, so he is definitely responding to the closing Trent Krentz. You see the gap there, 7/10 between 1st and 2nd. See, JRB kicked up some dirt there on the right side, trying to get every inch of this racing surface and take advantage of some points that he can cut or maybe extend the track limits just a little bit. It's got to be careful about it, though. There you see another best sector of anybody from JRB. So he is definitely doing his best job to keep Trent Krentz behind him, but Trent Krentz is staying right with him. You see there, I think the gap honestly has closed. So these two trading off sector times. And Trent Krentz probably about just a car length behind now. And the smart move for Trenton would just be stay at about this gap and then stay in the slipstream and make the move down the back straightaway. We know the slipstream is powerful enough. We've seen Pac-Man pull off 2 moves down the back straightaway just using raw slipstream alone. So we'll see Trent Krentz if he stays in the slipstream, but JRB had a terrible run there through the second carousel. So the gap even smaller now as they head down the hill. JRB takes the corner tight there, hit the curb. Looked like he wiggled up the track, and Trent Krentz is going to have a fantastic run down the hill onto this back straightaway. In the slipstream, we'll see if JRB will fight him. I said Trent Krentz has to make the move before JRB pits, and it looks like he's gonna. We'll see if JRB blocks at all. About halfway down the straight now. Krentz just sitting behind the back bumper of JRB, the race leader, waiting to make the move. I don't think he will, actually. Wow. He absolutely could have. Maybe he saved fuel. Maybe he's just toying with him. Maybe trying to force JRB into a mistake. But I'm almost certain he could have gone for the move. And here comes JRB. And he will pit. Trent Krentz will stay out as we expect. Bill Baldwin flying up the hill. And my best guess is that he will come into pit as well. Yes, he does. So Trent Krentz now will have to put down a really good lap as Bill Baldwin and JRB will put on fresh tires, and they'll have to put down an even better lap. And that gap could not have been closer when this pit cycle started. Jesse Carlson comes in as well from 4th, Pac-Man from 5th. Chris Ryan just now making his way down the back straightaway. Was running in the top 5 position at one point. Pretty convincingly, but has clearly lost a lot of time off that front pack. And now looks like he'll just have to settle for 6th. Percussive just nowhere today. Generally we see him right up there in the top 5, but right now very, very lonely 7th place. Alex Tezdal runs in 8th, and we had Rob Lohman Sr. drop out in 9th. So Trent Krentz leading the way again, yet to make a second stop, and this is probably one of the most important laps of the race, if not the most important lap of the race. Trent Krentz has to get the overcut to work, stay out the extra lap. But we saw how quick he closed up. I mean, well, I don't know if it really was quick. It took him until the very end of the pit cycle. But he could have gone for that move. Trent Krentz absolutely could have gone for the move down the back straightaway. I'm confident that he just didn't do it. So, in theory, should he maintain that exact gap, that means on the last lap, technically, Trent Krentz would have the gap to close up to JRB and then pass him going into the final section of the track. And if that happens at the Nordschleife Grand Prix, I've seen it all. So we will see how the rest of this race ends up. JRB obviously has to put down an incredible outlap time, and Trent Krentz is going to have to do the same, but for an in-lap. And it almost pains me that I'm going to have to wait 4.5 minutes to see how this all turns out, but that's how it is here in Germany. Jesse Carlson going to do his best to keep Pac-Man behind him, and there's Pac-Man in the background making a mistake, and that might just lock up 4th place for Jesse Carlson. Pac-Man 2nd in the championship. The 3rd major mistake we've seen him make today. Made the mistake on lap 1, dropped him back to 6th, and while battling for 5th earlier, made a mistake. Whoa. Technical difficulties there. And then just now we saw him trying to close up to Jesse Carlson and makes another huge mistake, sending him into a 360. And I think that's going to just lock him into 5th place unless Jesse Carlson makes some major mistakes. And that is huge. Because Trent Krentz and Bill Baldwin, the 2 guys right around Pac-Man in the championship, are almost guaranteed podiums. And Pac-Man is going to get just 5th place. We knew coming in that this would be an important night for the championship. We knew it would be a crazy race and that things could get turned right upside down. And unfortunately for Pac-Man, he's the one being grabbed by the heels. Here's Trent Krentz making his way through the carousel. He is obviously the race leader, trying to put down a really good in-lap time. He will pit at the end of this lap, almost certain. And here's JRB making his way through the corner before the carousel. Very, very tight, very technical, very slow right-hander. That has caught me off many a times. And now JRB makes his way through the carousel hairpin. Ooh, looked a little messy through there. Looked like he bottomed out a little bit. Let's check the timing sheets. Actually, let's wait until they clear the next sector, because it's coming up in just a second. And we'll check the time sheets. Now, I'm not entirely sure how long a pit stop lasts. But just so we know what the timing table looks like. Crosses the sector line there. 17.7 seconds is the gap between Trent Krentz and JRB. And honestly, that sounds pretty big. We will see. Obviously, Trent Krentz pitting later will have to take less fuel. So that could be a small determining factor in why he's pulling off this overcut. Or at least going to try to pull it off. But again, I wonder why he just doesn't take the safe route. But never question a racing driver. They know what they're doing better than anyone else. He doesn't really have a good sector time through there. 2.8 seconds off the best time through there. So we'll see if JRB can take advantage of that lost time wherever Trenton lost it. Or if maybe that's just a product of the older tires. JRB's lap time through that sector, or sector time through that sector, I should say, will be... I'm not too sure. Never told me. Cool. Okay. Anyway, down the back straightaway, Trent Krentz about a minute away from making his pit stop. A little less, I'd say. Down the back straightaway, where 6 minutes ago, we saw him right on the back bumper of JRB. Clearly felt like forever ago. And we will see where that number 15 Supra comes out in relation to this number 12 FT1. Bill Baldwin, I believe, outside at 10 seconds behind JRB, just has kind of fallen off the more the race has gone on. And that's highly unfortunate, but he will close up to Pac-Man for second, at least, in the championship points table. So, up front, Trent Krentz comes into the pits now. Now we keep the eyes on JRB, who's coming out of the back straightaway, under the overpass, and into this twisty right, left, right, left, right. There's some way or sorts section of the circuit. There's the pit entrance on the right. We will see what happens. Coming around the right-hander and cross the start-finish line. Really drove it into that right-hander. And Trent Krentz is going to jump him. Trent Krentz with the overcut is going to have to fuel less. Does a drift as he leaves the pit lane. Not sure if that was intentional and to show off, or if maybe that was just an accident on the cold tires. But has easily cleared JRB and will maintain the race lead. We're also about to have our first lapper. Alex Tezdal looks like he's about to go a lap down. He's running 8th in the Ford Mustang, last on track. Only thing JRB can hope for is a Trent Krentz mistake. A very rare occurrence. Happens once in a blue moon. We see right there, Jeremy obviously not giving up. Best sector time of anybody through there. And he maybe can hope that Trent Krentz has a bad outlap on the cold tires. But by now, honestly, those tires are probably up to temperature. But you never know. That is not information I have. Less than 11 minutes to go here in Germany. This is probably... I mean, it'll be close. This might be the second to last lap, but it's going to be close. And if Trent Krentz has to run one more lap, but JRB crosses the line at a point where the race has ended, that could honestly be really controversial. Because obviously in this league, in this series, once the Gran Turismo timer hits 1 hour, the race is over. You cross the line and you're done. So Trent Krentz could cross the line with, 5 seconds before the timer runs out, and he has to run an entire lap of the Nordschleife. But JRB crosses the line after it hits an hour, and he can't pass Trent Krentz. He doesn't have that extra lap. So that's why you can't bet on anything. You got to just make the moves happen as it gets late in the race. JRB so far, through all the sectors that we've seen, has put down the best sector of anybody. So he is really going for it. You see Alex Tezdal there, a lap down in the Ford Mustang. Less than 10 minutes to go. And there's about 4 minutes left of this lap. I mean, it'll be close. Here's Trent Krentz making his way through the back side of the track. Coming up pretty soon on the carousel that we saw JRB last lap. I'm not really sure if I'm just mistaken, but it did look like through the carousel JRB bottomed out a little bit, and that could have cost him a good amount of time. Losing time through the carousel is not something you want to do. And that could have been a factor in why Trent Krentz has gapped him so much. Let's check the gap when they come across the sector line this time around. On the other side of this left-hander, they're making their way through. We will check the timing sheets. There's Trent Krentz coming up into the set of hairpins, and JRB has crossed the sector line. Let's check the time, 4.3 seconds. And honestly, aside from the pit cycle, I believe that's the largest we've seen that gap all day. And really, that's not a gap at all. So this has really been a very close race since the drop of the green flag. But right there, you see JRB runs the top lane of the carousel, and that is huge. That is not something you want to do. Obviously, we didn't see Trent Krentz go through there, but I can bet my money that he took it cleanly. So that has cost JRB a really good amount of time, because running that top line as opposed to the actual bottom banked groove cost you so much time. Still the fastest sector through there for JRB, which boggles my mind, and he didn't really lose any time. But in theory and basically anywhere else, the top lane is always much slower than the carousel, or the banked carousel, which swoops you around as opposed to, a flat hairpin. Regardless, maybe I'm just insane. There's Trent Krentz making his way through that left-hander, and you saw at the bottom of your screen JRB now making his way through the left-hander. It's a close gap. Trent Krentz makes one mistake, and JRB will be right there. Less than 7 minutes to go, about a minute and a half. So this next lap, I believe now, will be the last lap. So this is more than likely the penultimate lap of the Nordschleife Grand Prix here in the NOSSCAR GT Cup Series. So JRB will have one last chance, including the rest of this lap. And one last chance on this circuit is almost 7 minutes. But you see the gap there has definitely grown. 6 seconds now. JRB struggling. Maybe made a mistake. And he's going to have to gain about a second per minute if he wants a shot at winning this Nordschleife Grand Prix. Less than 6 minutes to go now. Yeah, I can guarantee now this is the penultimate lap, and he's coming up to the start-finish line to start the final lap. Trent Krentz looking for his 7th win of the season. And on the other end of the stick, it'll be Pac-Man, who came into the race in second, will hold second place in the standings, but with this very lowly 5th place finish, it's really going to hurt his championship hopes. Trent Krentz will start the final lap of this Grand Prix and just has to put together one more clean circuit around the Nordschleife. The green hell, he has most certainly tamed it to this point. We'll see if JRB can become the master of the reins in this next 6.5 minutes, but it'll take a lot if JRB wants to close up to the race leader. Bill Baldwin obviously was very much in this top 3 battle early on, but after the first pit stop, just kind of disappeared, and that's got to be so frustrating. That's been the story of his race. He's been right there, but come crunch time, Bill has just kind of fallen off. Still a very solid 3rd in the championship, but it's gonna have to be win or bust from here. Which is, I believe, 4 more races after this. Bill needs to start winning some Grand Prix. Still will continue his perfect podium streak on the bright side, but he doesn't care about stats like that. He wants the wins, and he wants the championship title. Trent Krentz through this very tight left-right chicane for the final time. Can't believe I'm saying final time when there's still 3.5 minutes left in the race. This race flew by. This is probably the fastest I've ever felt a race go by this season. That's a good thing. It was a very exciting Grand Prix. Obviously not over by any means yet. There's still about 5 minutes racing left to go. But this was a really intense Grand Prix. There wasn't much actual on-track action, but seeing Trent Krentz and JRB go back and forth through the event definitely was something to see on a track like this that you wouldn't come in expecting, a race for the lead. Usually it's one person who's absolutely mastered the circuit, just kind of drives off and waves goodbye. But tonight, we saw JRB is worth his stuff. Obviously, big mistake there. It looked like he took the corner a little too tight right as I talked him up. But no, JRB is definitely worth his stuff. I find it really unfortunate he missed a couple races early this season, because I don't think he'd really be in the championship fight, but he would have it in him, I think. He's a very talented driver, and it was really nice to see him go back and forth with Trent Krentz tonight. Trenton having about 7 seconds better of him, now 9 seconds better of him. Trent Krentz now a 9-second lead, and you see there, best sector something time. Haven't even attempted to keep track of the sectors. There's just so many on the circuit that I'm not even going to try to bother. But hasn't taken his foot off the gas whatsoever. We've seen that every race that he dominates. He doesn't become complacent. He doesn't become lazy. He just keeps moving forward with a full head of steam, and that is exactly what he's doing in this championship. He took the championship lead about 4 or 5 races in. I'm not too sure when it actually was. But once he took it, he has maintained that first place gap, or the first place spot in the standings ever since. Through the carousel for the final time. Here's JRB through the carousel for the final time. See, this time around, stays in the bank part of the turn, but somehow last time around obviously ended up on the flat part of the circuit, but it ended up being his best sector time, which really confuses me, but it's all a moot point now. And they're coming up past halfway in this lap, much past halfway in this lap, less than a minute to go, and there's Trent Krentz making a mistake, and that could have been so much worse. Trent Krentz, a huge mistake there. Through the uphill, downhill, I believe that's right, left. I'm not really good with directions. Clobbered the wall after going off track. And that could have been so... Sorry about that. That could have been so much worse. Big mistake from me there. Luckily, at this point, JRB has really dropped back. But if that happened when he had that 4 or 5 second gap, this race would have just started. But Trent Krentz keeps a hold of the car only just. And there's just a couple more tricky corners to go. The timer has officially run out. And we will see Trent Krentz through the second. That's not the second carousel. I don't know this track at all. This is the second carousel. Trent Krentz through there for the final time. JRB. If JRB knows about Trent Krentz's mistake, he's got to be very frustrated that he didn't maintain the closer gap. But now down the back straightaway for the final time. And then that Toyota Supra will cross the line in first place for about the millionth time this year. Won 5 in a row. Went 2 weeks without winning. Won last week, and this will be his 7th win of the season. And at this point, it's going to be very hard for anybody to catch him. Trent Krentz through the final corner of the green hell. Does a little skid. Comes across the line to take the checker flag. Trent Krentz wins the 7th race of the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series season. Maintains his championship lead and wins the Nordschleife Grand Prix. JRB, a very frustrating second. Definitely had a shot at winning this race. And Jesse Carlson, what in the world has gotten around Bill Baldwin? I'm not sure at all when this happened. That Pride Ally 48 Corvette at some point has gotten around the 21 Toyota FT1 and has spoiled the Toyota party by just about a car length. Jesse Carlson out of nowhere takes the final podium spot. Bill Baldwin 4th. And that's got to be frustrating. Pac-Man, the most frustrated of them all down the back straightaway for the final time. Started second. And when he started, he looked a little slow and then just overdrove it and made 3 huge mistakes tonight, but finally comes across the line in agony and despair. And Pac-Man in the green Mountain Dew number 19 Toyota FT1 comes across the line in 5th, but his championship gap has opened back up to the leader, Trent Krentz, and he's got to start getting them wins again if he wants to win this title. Further back down the circuit, it is going to be Chris Ryan running in 6th. About to put Alex Tezdal a lap down. So these two will cross the line, nose to tail. So once Chris Ryan crosses the line, the race is just about over. Percussive will cross the line in 7th, but I don't think he's going to catch Chris Ryan. So here we go. This will be Alex Tezdal crossing line 8th and Chris Ryan crossing line 6th. Chris ran in the top 5 at a point, but dropped back a little bit and ends up in 6th. Alex Tezdal, we saw him a lap down in 8th. And Percussive, we're going to be here a while if we wait for him to cross the line. He's locked into 7th place. Definitely an off night for the Toyota driver. But we will skip ahead because we have the magical powers to do so. And we will see Percussive cross the line in 7th. So Trent Krentz wins, JRB 2nd, and a huge surprise, Jesse Carlson 3rd. That was the Nordschleife Grand Prix of the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series, and we hope you join us next week for the next round of the season.